I'm Don Curtis, and this is Isaiah lesson number 3, and we happen to be in chapter 3. So we begin here. For behold, the Lord Adonai of hosts is going to remove from Jerusalem and Judah both supply and support, the whole supply of bread and the whole supply of water. I'm going to start here with this phrase, Adonai of hosts. And let's go to 2 Kings chapter 6 for a description of what this concept of host is all about. So 2 Kings chapter 6 verse 8. Now the king of Aram was warring against Israel and counseled with his servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Arameans are coming down there. Anyway, I want to go down to 15. This is the context here. The king of Aram is sending his soldiers down there. He's coming to a place where Elisha, the prophet, exists, where he's living and so forth. So we pick up the story here in verse 15. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was circling the city. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? And so he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And the servant is looking around and saying, well, I see you, I see them. What do you mean? Those that are with us are more than those with them. 17, then Elisha prayed and said, O Adonai, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And Adonai opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire. This is what it means by Adonai of hosts. Adonai has his armies. Now, I think there's a little bit of this is anthropomorphic, but the idea is that if Adonai chooses to come to the defense or the aid of his people, he has everything at his disposal to do this. In this particular case, there's the army out there. The eyes of Elisha's servant is open, and he sees the armies, the host of Adonai coming to their aid. And of course, this story has a great outcome. The armies of Aram are blinded. They're delivered over to the king of Israel, and they are sent on their merry way. Okay. So when we come to Isaiah chapter 3, it's interesting that it begins with this phrase, for behold, Adonai of hosts is going to remove. See, there's an irony here. Adonai of hosts, Adonai of the resources that could come to your aid, should I choose to come to your aid, is not going to come to your aid. Okay, Adonai of hosts, the Adonai who could do something about your situation, is in fact going to remove from Jerusalem and Judah both supply and support, the whole supply of bread and the whole supply of water. So, see, there's an intentional irony here. Adonai could do something, but he isn't. He's going to do something else. He's in fact going to do the very opposite. He is going to remove your defenses from you, because the list goes on here. The mighty man and the warrior, the judge and the prophet, the diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the honorable man, the counselor and the expert artisan and the skillful enchanter, and I will make mere lads their princes, and capricious children will rule over them. Okay, so why is this going on, right? Well, we get one clue back when from chapter 2, verse 5, come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light of Adonai. But then we had the description of how they in fact were not walking by the light of Adonai, that they in fact were worshiping idols, that they were going after idols, they were going after idols, they were going for their defenses, they were going to other nations and things like that. They were doing everything except going to Adonai and saying, could you help us? As a matter of fact, if we were to drop down to verse 8 here in chapter 3, which is critical because this is the root cause of what's going on here. And in verse 8 it says, for Jerusalem has stumbled And Judah has fallen because their speech and their actions are against Adonai to rebel against his glorious presence. And that's the root cause. They have rebelled against Adonai's glorious presence. And they've done that by going after idols. They've done that by going after other gods and so forth. This is where, it's things like this, though, that where the Old Testament gets a bad rap. I don't know how many times I've read that the Old Testament presents a God of vengeance and wrath and things like that, and you come to the New Testament and it's a God of mercy and so forth. It's the same God. You know, now here, this is a God who is removing from Jerusalem both supply and support, but let's reflect on a couple things here. Some other stories to give us some insight into what's going on here. Let's take, for example, the story of the prodigal son that's recorded in Luke. You know the story. You have a landowner, and he has two sons. And the one son, his younger son, comes to him and says, "Father, I want my half of the inheritance. Give it to me right now. I want to go off and I want to live my life with my inheritance." So the father lets him do it. I mean, the father could have said, "No, you can wait until I die, thank you very much, thank you." But the father says, "You know, you want to leave me? You want to leave with my resources and so forth? I'm going to let you." So the father gives the son his part of the inheritance, and the son goes off and completely and totally squanders it. He ends up with nothing. As a matter of fact, he ends up with worse than nothing, because he, being a good Jewish boy, is feeding unkosher pigs. And he's actually looking at the things he's feeding the pigs, and he says, "You know, that looks pretty good. I could make a meal out of that myself." And as it says, he comes to his senses. And in coming to his senses, he then returns to his father. Okay? Now, I would tell you that this story is the same as this story here. The younger son rebelled against the presence of his father. The younger son rebelled against the things, the capabilities, the training, the livelihood, and things like that the father could have given him. And the father, in a sense, by giving the son the resources, also withdrew his support, withdrew his wisdom, withdrew his aid. You know, you might even say that when the son was at the very bottom of things, the father had the resources to come in and bail the son out. And I don't know about you, but I've seen parent after parent after parent of wayward children that practically exhaust themselves and their resources trying to bail out kids that really should not be bailed out. You know, because nothing changes. In this particular case, the father let the son go to the bottom until the son came to his senses and returned. Okay? So there's something like this going on here. It says, Adonai of hosts, Adonai of the resources that could come to the aid of Judah and Jerusalem as this Assyrian threat is beginning to develop in the north, is in fact going to withdraw support. It's going to withdraw wisdom. It's going to withdraw the things so that Judah and Jerusalem will hit some bottom that allows for a full return. This is the phrase in the past has been tough love, but let me just say this. This is wisdom. This is knowing what to do to achieve an end, which is the restoration, a full restoration, a restoration that in fact is full of wisdom and things like that. Another passage that we go to that relates to this. This is in Romans chapter 1. See, it's interesting when we look at the way that God handles things, they sometimes go counter to the way that we would handle them. You know, our kids go astray, and we want to hound them. You know, we want to make continued appeals to them and things like that, trying to get them to change and go in a different direction. But what we read in Romans 1, we'll hear with verse 18, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. But even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. So do you see the pattern here? They rebel, in a sense, they are rebelling against God's glorious presence. God has revealed that he is the creator, his divine attributes, his divine nature being revealed to the creation, and even though people perceive that there is a creator God, they rebel against his glorious presence. And it says here, they become futile in their speculations, and their foolish mind, their foolish heart is darkened. This is an action that Adonai takes to, rather than, go to the ends of the earth to appeal to someone. He says, look, I'm the source of your wisdom. You can seek it from me. Anytime you want to turn around and return and seek my ways, I will open myself up to you. But in the meantime, if you are walking away from me, I will basically compound your foolishness so that you can reach the end of your ways as soon as possible, so that you can wake up and return. So when you're reading the Old Testament, because you're going to read a lot of very, very troubling things. You're going to read about famine. You're going to read about women eating their children in sieges. You're going to read terrible things. You're going to read about genocide at God's command. And you need to understand that behind every one of this is a motivation of mercy and restoration and recovery that God has. And what we need to do as seekers is understand what God is doing. Let me give you a brief history of how this works out. And here I'm going to go forward in time. James, do you have a question?
I do. Does this relate, do you think, to the picture of personal salvation and even national salvation? Is this the way it tends to work?
I think
have to come to the end of ourselves before we reach?
Hopefully not, but it can get there. Hopefully we wake up before we reach the actual rock bottom. The appeal is certainly there, and the ability to turn is certainly there at any time. But yeah, the picture is there. The thing is that if we want to go our own way, Adonai will let us go our own way, and he just isn't going to support it. Okay? If we want to return to him, if we want to seek his ways, he will, in a sense, open up the floodgates of wisdom. And here's what wisdom is. Wisdom is not head knowledge. In the Hebrew idea of wisdom is more skill. You've heard the phrase learn and live, or live and learn. Live and learn. You live your life, you make your mistakes, you learn from your mistakes. The concept of wisdom is just the opposite. It is learn and live. Learn what others have done in terms of the path of wisdom, and walk in that, and you will live better because of the wisdom that can be imparted to you. Now, and I just lost my... yes. I want to go forward about 180 years from Isaiah, and this is when Adonai has come to the prophet Jeremiah, and he basically says this: it's over for Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, I don't want you to even pray for the people. You've been trying to pray for them. I want you to stop it. Because if even Moses or Samuel were praying for this people, I wouldn't hear them. Because I am bringing my wrath on them. I'm bringing the fullness of the curses on them, because they have far exceeded the idolatry and the child sacrifice and everything else that's going on. This is a murderous generation, and they're one generation away from losing the knowledge of me. So I'm bringing the Babylonians, and I'm going to destroy the city, I'm going to destroy the temple, and I'm going to cart them all off. Okay, it says that. But here's what Adonai starts doing, and every one of these things is a tragedy in its own right. But I want you to see how these tragedies create a blessing. The first tragedy is Nebuchadnezzar comes down. He has an incursion in Jerusalem, and he carts off a bunch of young royals to his court. Among them is Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And Daniel rises to be the second in command counselor to King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? But that's a tragedy for the family. If the family loses their son, he's carted off, he's going to be trained in the ways of the Chaldeans. But Daniel perseveres in his knowledge of Adonai and becomes a valued counselor to King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? A couple of years later, Nebuchadnezzar goes into Jerusalem, and he carts off the king, whose name was Jehoiachin at the time, and he carts off 10,000 craftsmen, takes them to Babylon. And you know what those 10,000 craftsmen start doing? They start building houses. They start building businesses. Jeremiah sends these 10,000 families a letter that says, build, settle in, give your children in marriage, seek the welfare of the city where Adonai your God has placed you. Build. Don't expect to come back here. Build there. Okay. Some 15 years later, Nebuchadnezzar comes and he actually destroys the city and the temple and things like that. And he exiles the people. Do you know what Adonai has done? He has created a community. He has created a community for the very destitute, the ones who have been ravaged by the famine and by the sword and the pestilence. He has created a community for them to go to. So here we have this series of tragedies that are built such that God has a place. He has prepared a place to provide mercy at the very end. Okay? This is what God does. When we talk about all this stuff that God is doing in history, even things that he is doing now, the things that we might look in the news that we find very, very troubling, we need to understand that God is doing the same kinds of things today that he did back then. It may be a tragedy, but it is a tragedy that is setting up a future good. And therefore we trust. Therefore we trust. But there is a law here that says if we want to turn away from God, God will let us turn away from him, and he will just allow a darkness to descend on us. On the other hand, if we return to the light, we can expect to be endowed with wisdom, with a wisdom that allows for us to live better lives. Because you are seeking after Adonai, because you are seeking after his ways, he does just the opposite of what he's doing here. Instead of creating darkness, he provides light. He provides supernatural insight, supernatural things. He comes to your aid. As a matter of fact, what happens is that Adonai of hosts, the hosts are on your side because you are seeking after him. But not in the case here in Isaiah chapter 3. As it says here, Adonai of hosts is going to remove from Jerusalem. And as I said last week, this is not God's permissive will. This is not saying, I'm going to allow these things to happen. This is Adonai directly doing it. Adonai is going to remove. Doesn't say allow to be removed. Doesn't say anything like that. Adonai is the agent here. The mighty man and the warrior. That's your military. Not only is Adonai's host not coming to your aid, but he is going to remove from you an effective military even on your own. The judge and the prophet, justice. He is going to remove justice from your midst. Your judges are going to become corrupted, and your prophets, those who are telling you what's right and wrong about where you're going, are going to come up with the wrong answers. The diviner and the elder, the one who is able to see what maybe is going on, and the honorable aged who, because of their wisdom, have something to impart. They will be taken away. Their wisdom will be taken away. The captain of 50 and the honorable man, the counselor and the expert artisan and the skillful enchanter. Even your art is going to start getting ugly. It's just everything is just going to begin a period of decay. And I will make mere lads their princes, and capricious children will rule over them. I don't know about you, but I look at some of our leaders in Washington, and I say, you guys, get it together. Mere lads, he's withholding wisdom from our leaders in terms of even their ability to make wise and good choices on our behalf. It's all being taken away. And the people will be oppressed, each one by another, and each one by his neighbor. The youth will storm against the elder, and the inferior against the honorable. So I think we see some of that going on today. You know, the inferior against the honorable, the youth against the older. And then it says, when a man lays hold of his brother in his father's house, saying, you have a cloak, you shall be our ruler, and these ruins will be under your charge. And he will protest on that day, saying, I will not be your healer, for in my house there is neither bread nor cloak. You should not appoint me to be ruler over the people. Translation here. Unfortunately, we have not gotten here yet as a nation. But this is where we can look forward to the day where everybody in Washington quits. Right? I mean, that's what it's talking about. It's like, this is so bad. And quite frankly, if I'm a ruler, I'll probably lose my head. I am not going to do it. And there will be a large-scale abandonment of even responsibilities in government. He will and then in verse 8, as it says again, for Jerusalem has stumbled and Judah has fallen because their speech and their actions are against Adonai, to rebel against his glorious presence. So I mentioned last week, I remember being in elementary school. And I would go in, I'm in 6th grade, I'd go in and Mrs. Steese would begin the day by opening up a Bible and reading from it. Just in public school. And then we would have a prayer. And, you know, all of that changed in 1963 when the Supreme Court said, well, that's the establishment of religion. And, you know, it may have been good if it had stopped there. It may have been good. It says, okay, so, yeah, we can make the case that we shouldn't be reading the Bible, let's say the New Testament to Jewish children. We should maybe be reading the Old Testament to Buddhists and things like that. But that began a movement where bit by bit, Adonai, Christianity, the Judeo-Christian ethic in this nation, was systematically pushed away from the public square. We are allowed to hold our religion as long as it doesn't leave our skin. I mean, see, my personal faith ends right here. Okay, can be very difficult for me to speak it. It can be, and that's a rebellion against the glorious presence. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. We became a great nation because we were a nation that had a large population seeking after God. You know, we were seeking to establish our laws based on Old Testament principles of justice. You know, it wasn't perfect. You know, certainly you can go and you can find a whole lot wrong year after year after year. I'm not defending the wrong stuff. But by and large, we sought the scriptures. And in continuing that, a lot of the stuff that was wrong could have been corrected along biblical lines, you know, after a time. We became great with that. And in a sense, we became a world power, a world economy, and all the nations are looking at us. And we're blessed. And then we say, God, get out of here. Adonai, get out of here. We're not interested in you anymore. He is not going to withdraw his blessings to be vindictive. He is going to withdraw his blessings because he has to communicate to the rest of the world that he exists. See, if he continues blessing us, then the world says, well, you know, really there is no God. The U.S. is being blessed for reasons other than their relationship with God. So that we rebel against his presence. He withdraws his wisdom. He withdraws blessings. And some people out there will notice the pattern. Will notice that when we rebelled against him, we became a very stupid, unwise, and dumb nation. Okay. So in verse 9, the expression on their faces bears witness against them, and they display their sin like Sodom. They do not even conceal it. Woe to them, they have brought evil on themselves. Interesting here that we start with Adonai is going to remove, but here it says, you know, really ultimately they did it themselves because they've rebelled against my presence. And then verse 10 is for us. It is for those of us in this room. Isaiah 3:10, say to the righteous that it will go well with them, for they will eat the fruit of their actions. Okay. See, here's our danger. and this is going to be increasingly so, we're going to do things the right way, and it's going to cost us. We're going to be honest against people who, aren't. And that's going to put us at a disadvantage. It may even cost us our savings and things like that. This is our rationale to press on, to do what is right, to continue to do what is right, knowing that in the end, when all the dust is settled, it will be well with us. I'm not saying that this doesn't mean that one of us in this room, some of us in the room might lose everything, including our lives, our livelihood and things like that. I'm not saying that it goes well with us guaranteed in the physical realm, but there is a time coming when we will have a reward for maintaining a righteous attitude in these difficult times. And then in verse 11, woe to the wicked, it will go badly with him, for what he deserves will be done to him. Oh, my people, their oppressors are children, and women rule over them. Oh, my people, those who guide you lead you astray and confuse the direction of your paths. And that's where we're at. Okay.
I don't know if you guys saw this last night on Fox News, but they had the American Atheist Association, that might not be the exact correct term for them, has launched a campaign against Christmas. And they are boycotting and protesting retailers who, and impacting them and having some success in impacting them financially if they are advertising Christmas. So it's a holiday.
Yes.
But there's a pretty strong movement that against the retailers to try to financially punish them for.
Yeah, that might work out as well as trying to boycott Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
That's
possible.
Yeah. I mean, word gets out that someone is boycotting, establishments that are promoting Christianity, and the Christians have a way of, rallying behind that. Interesting. Back in the 1980s, I was a subscriber to the American Humanist Association magazine. I like to get my stuff direct from the sources. I don't like to hear. I really am not interested in someone telling me what humanism is. I want to read what humanism is from humanists. So I subscribed to the American Humanist magazine. The president of the American Humanist Association at the time was Isaac Asimov, the great science fiction writer. And not only that, but as soon as I subscribed to this magazine, I started getting fundraising material from the American Civil Liberties Union and from the American Humanist Association, from all these left-wing groups. I started getting fundraising letters and so forth. And I still remember one from Isaac Asimov that talked about Liberty University having a copy of the Humanist magazine in their libraries. And his comment on this was, even our enemies know where to get reliable information on humanism. Yeah, even our enemies. This is what I found. This is what I found from reading the American Humanist magazine. Every issue, I've got it every 2 months, every issue had more ink spent on Christianity than on humanism. They were obsessed with Christianity. They were conflating us with Nazism and all kinds of manner of evils and things like that. I remember the one article that was called Fundamentalist Anonymous, which is a group that was formed like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, to help us poor fundamentalists, react to the errors of our ways. So there's no end of lying and things like that out there, but. The message for us, because since I read chapter 3 here, and I see where this seems to flow the way our country has flowed. This seems to describe our country, and it seems to describe it for exactly the same reasons. I need to come to verse 10 and say, this tells me that I need to press on. Let me go to Psalm 73, because I like to go places that I think we might end up. So Psalm 73 is by a guy named Asaph. And Asaph has a problem. He is sick, and he is tired of doing good because everyone who is doing evil is prospering and he isn't. So even in this psalm, he gets to the point, he says, surely in vain have I kept my heart pure. Okay, so I want to read this to you. Psalm 73. He actually begins with his conclusion, but then he gets into his problem. Surely God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet came close to stumbling, my steps had also slipped. For I was envious of the arrogant, and I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no pains in their death, and their body is fat. They are not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like mankind. Therefore pride is their necklace, the garment of violence covers them. Their eye bulges from fatness, their imagination of their heart run riot. They mock and wickedly speak of oppression. They speak from on high. They have set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue parades through the earth. And they are fat, dumb, and happy. Their eye bulges with fatness. I mean, can you just picture a face that's just fat, where the eyelids themselves have fat that's just causing them to just bulge? There's no pain in their death. They're by that means that they're not starving to death. They are just living nice all the way up to the end, and then they die. And boy, doesn't that look good to Asaph. He says, therefore his people return to this place, and waters of abundance are drunk by them. They say, how does God know, and is there knowledge with the Most High? It's a little bit like what's going on today. As you said, the atheists are saying, what's there knowledge up there? Nah. Let's just live the good life. Let's accumulate wealth. Let's live because tomorrow we're going to die. So let's just live and pursue pleasure and so forth. Behold, these are the wicked, and always at ease they have increased in wealth. Surely in vain have I kept my heart pure and washed my hands in innocence. See, that's our danger. Surely in vain have we kept our hearts pure, because it's costing us. Again, we're going to enter into a period where it could very much cost us dearly to maintain to be Christians. And we can be like Asaph. He says, so surely in vain have I kept my heart pure and washed my hands innocent, for I have been stricken all day long and chastened every morning. They're living high off the hog, I'm being chastened. I have financial troubles, I have health troubles, and if I were just to change my way of life, I could live like them. And then in 15 it says, if I had said, I will speak thus, behold, I would have betrayed the generation of your children. When I pondered to understand this, it was troublesome in my sight. Until I came into the sanctuary of God, then I perceived their end. So like so many other things here, Asaph is troubled until he comes into the very presence of God and perceives who God is and what his ways are and what the end of the things are. And as soon as he perceived that in a fundamental way, in the heart, we're not talking about head up here. He suddenly perceives it in the heart. He says, surely you have set them in slippery places. You cast them down to destruction. How they are destroyed in a moment. They are utterly swept away by sudden terrors. Like a dream when one awakes, O Lord, when aroused, you will despise their form. So like today, we're in a day where the wicked are in the ascendancy because Adonai is in the process of setting them in slippery places. We just have to be patient and wait. And in the meantime, we have to pursue our righteousness. Surely in vain, we have not, surely not in vain are we keeping our hearts pure and pursuing righteousness. It says, when my heart was embittered and I was pierced within, then I was senseless and ignorant like a beast before you. Doesn't this sound a little bit like when I was thinking about walking away from you, I was becoming a senseless brute. You were pulling your wisdom from me. Right? Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You have taken hold of my right hand. With your counsel you will guide me. Afterward you will receive me to glory. See? He turns, comes back to God. He regains God's counsel. And his life begins to take a new turn. His situation doesn't get any better, but his whole attitude is better. And then I love this. Whom have I in heaven but you, and besides you I desire nothing on earth. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For behold, those who are far from you will perish, and you have destroyed all those who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, the nearness of God is my good. I've made Adonai my God my refuge, that I may tell of all your works. So we see we still have a choice. Our nation can be going down this path, but we still have a choice. And that is a choice that we need to make and determine to continue making. And obviously it is done by the Holy Spirit. You know, this is not something that can be done necessarily in our own strength. It is something that has to be done by our perceiving our lack, perceiving our fears and things like that, and saying, Holy Spirit, walk me to the better place, and knowing that He will. Okay, back to Isaiah chapter 3. Adonai arises to contend and stands to judge the people. Adonai enters into judgment with the elders and princes of His people. It is you who have devoured the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses. What do you mean by crushing my people and grinding the face of the poor, declares Adonai, God of hosts. And now we're back to Adonai, God of hosts again. Only here the implication is that His host will come to the aid of the poor and the oppressed and the ones that you are denying justice to. Okay. Then he takes an interesting little turn. He describes the daughters of Zion. And what he is... I think the best imagery here, Queen of France during the French Revolution, there was, or before the French Revolution, there was France was highly stratified, with the very wealthy, the very rich, living excellent, great lives, and then, there's this great absence of the middle class, and then there's the poor. I think the book Les Miserables, and certainly the musical Les Miserables, presents that in a very, very significant way, the struggle of the poor. And they're complaining, and they say, we need relief, we need justice. And apparently this queen said, well, let them eat cake. They want bread, let them eat cake, almost as if, what, can they wave this magic wand? And that apparently was one of the impetus where suddenly everyone rose up to come against the gentry. It is not, I'm going to read this, but you need to understand that it is not wealth per se that is an evil. Abraham was wealthy. David was wealthy. There's a lot of great godly men that had incredible wealth that just did not affect them. But they were, in many ways, they were compassionate with their wealth. They were willing to spend it on behalf of others as well as to enjoy it. But there is a wealth that accumulates more. There is a wealth that is not compassionate. There is a wealth that gets you to a point where you are not able to see the sufferings of others. And I think that's the biggest danger, that somehow or other you think that everyone is like you, that the gulf between you and the very bottom is not as great as it really is. And that is what Isaiah and Adonai through Isaiah is going to complain about here. And he's going to do it in terms of the women. Moreover, Adonai said, because the daughters of Zion are proud and walk with their heads held high and seductive eyes and go along with mincing steps and tinkle the bangles on their feet. It's like the parade of people on ET, the celebrities. These are the celebrities of the day, that just are, they feel like they can comment on anything. It says, therefore, the Lord will afflict the scalp of the daughters of Zion with scabs, and Adonai will make their foreheads bare. Meaning the time is coming when, with what Adonai is going to bring in, all this wealth is going to collapse, and their health is going to decline as well, to the point where their head is full of scabs, probably because of lice and things like that, or because the enemy has come along and shaved their hair off. In that day, the Lord will take away the beauty of their anklets, headbands, crescent ornaments, dangling earrings, bracelets, veils, headdresses, ankle chains, sashes, perfume boxes, amulets, finger rings, nose rings, festal robes, outer tunics, cloaks, money purses, hand mirrors, undergarments, turbans, and veils. So the entire list of what it takes to get them dressed in the day. And like I said, it is not that this per se is wrong. It is just that it is done in an uncompassionate way, that there is just so much focus on the self and no focus on Adonai and no focus on guaranteeing that the poor have justice or chances or things like that. So now will it come about that instead of sweet perfume there will be putrefaction, instead of a belt, a rope, instead of well-set hair, a plucked-out scalp, and branding instead of beauty. Your men will fall by the sword, and your mighty ones in battle, and her gates will lament and mourn, and deserted she will sit on the ground. This is this chapter is, like I said, it seems to touch where we are very much today. I have to say that probably the first time that I taught Isaiah, I wouldn't have taught it this way, because I think there was still hope. But now I look and I say, we're getting further and further away, and it distresses me. And I do see momentous things happening. But I look at what Jesus says concerning the end times, and he says, when you see these things happen, know that they're just the beginning of birth pangs. And so what we can expect in the future is something, if we're going to compare this to birth pangs, you have a contraction, you have pain. And then there's a release, and things go along, and then there's another contraction, and the contraction is a little more pain, and as time goes on, the contractions become sooner, and the intensity of them increases until the point where the baby is ready to be delivered. The good news for us is there's a baby at the end of this. See, this is all this stuff that God is doing on the earth is for this child of redemption and the Messianic kingdom to be born. And what he says is that when you see these things coming, look up, because your salvation is drawing near. So we have to be optimistic. See, we have to get to the point where as we see all this stuff going on, that we get to a place of optimism. And one of the advantages of the prophets is we get to see where Adonai knows all this that's going on and what's happening, and he just says, you guys be faithful. And that's what I'll leave you with. Chapter 4 is very short. It 4 will finish up about the women, and then we're going to get to chapter 5, which is a interesting poem about a vineyard, and we'll continue pursuing this.